Okay. Perfect. And we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is See Through, our podcast with me, Achuta Gopi. Good to see everybody. Welcome. So glad that we could all be here together. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Nityananda Trayodshi, which is a very fancy way of saying Happy Nityananda Appearance Day. Today being the 13th day of the waxing moon. Um, just a fun way of giving our lunar calendar. And so we're live on YouTube, but we're also live in our Zoom room. And you can become part of the Zoom room conversation through Patreon. And we'll get you a link for that. You can join Patreon through. There we go. And there's Patreon link. So if you are joining on YouTube, welcome. If you'd like to join in the Zoom room, and you are already a patron, please do head over so that we can see you and communicate with you and get all your questions, answers, excitement firsthand. So other than that, welcome. Today is a really, really special day. I happen to adore Lord Nityananda. Absolutely just. He's filled with mischief and magic and playfulness and reciprocation and love and mercy and compassion. All the things. All of them. And we'll get into a little bit of who Lord Nityananda is and some really sweet, sweet pastimes. Loving ones, because today is Valentine's Day. So I figured we should do something that kind of goes with the theme of the day. So if you are not a big Valentine's Day observer, right, if you're kind of just like, it's all just marketing ploy, I encourage you, take a moment today and really tap into that heart space. And let's give our heart to the truest of Valentines. There is a lot of talk about the origins of Valentine's Day and how it was really about a saint martyr. And it's not exactly like the happiest of stories. But the thing that I like to pick up on is that they're a saint martyr. You know, this is what we are trying and striving to give our lives for, right? We're trying to be on this spiritual path. And I was just on another podcast with friends, and we were talking about how this spiritual path should not be the antithesis of us feeling, having emotions and connections with other people, and then having emotions and connections and a relationship with our divine supreme best friend. So for me, Valentine's Day has, for the past several years, really been about giving my heart to my supreme person, my supreme people, because there's an entire crew of supreme people. Um, so for me, Radha Govinda have been my Valentines. You can see them right behind me. And I mean, there's always a reason to fall in love with divinity, especially in Krishna consciousness. There's so many beautiful and sweet attributes. So we'll talk about Nityananda. Nityananda, the name alone means eternally blissful. Just a giver of eternal happiness and bliss. And who doesn't want that in their lives? Who doesn't need that in our lives? I think we all need a little bit of bliss and happiness. And Nityananda is the ultimate source of all of it. Nityananda is none other than Balaram himself, who we've spoken about in a few previous episodes going through the introduction to Krishna book. We've spoken about Balaram and the elder brother of Sri Krishna. So Balaram, who was this elder brother of Sri Krishna, was also Lakshman to our Sri Ram, right? And that in that variable, it was the younger brother, right? So we've got Lakshman and Ram, we've got Krishna, Balaram, but now we have Gaur Nitai. And Nitai is a little bit of a nickname. So we've got Nityananda, the extended, but we've got Nitai. He's also called Nityananda Ram, right? Harkening back to the fact that he is the origin also. He's this Balaram. So Nityananda Ram, the source of all pleasure, the source of all eternal bliss. There is Vrindavan Das Thakur in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. he speaks about Lord Nityananda extensively, so much so that it's able to form its own book. But one quote says, "Your name is Nityananda, and indeed you are Nityananda, eternal bliss. You are the form of Sri Chaitanya's transcendental qualities. You deliver all living beings and protect religious principles at the time of annihilation. You descended to give Chaitanya Prem Bhakti. Indeed, you are the full potency of Lord Chaitanya. You teach supreme knowledge to devotees, headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Narada. Everyone receives Vishnu Bhakti from you, yet you are untouched by pride. You deliver the fallen souls without seeing their faults. Only the very pious can know you. You are the only enjoyer of sacrifices. Simply remembering you destroys the bondage of ignorance at once. If you do not manifest yourself, then who will understand you?" So, we get this idea. Nityananda is also quite mysterious. Um, he's one of those people that he kind of has to reveal himself for us to even begin to try and understand him, because many of us have read about his glories or his pastimes. They tend to be quite mysterious and a little confusing, and he acts according to his own wishes and his own will and his own whims at any given time. So many times there are pastimes about Lord Nityananda. He will swim and wrestle with crocodiles. He will do all kinds of inexplicable things. He will often adopt the mood of a cowherd boy and dress up like a wonderful prince of Brudge with a colorful turban and with peacock feathers and feathers and different colored feathers in his turban. He will often display moods of happiness, sadness, depending upon his own wishes at any given moment. So this is our Nitai, very difficult to pin down. But all of our spiritual teachers and acharyas say, if one person shows any amount of love for Sri Krishna, any amount of love for Sri Chaitanya, that is the key to Lord Nityananda's heart. This is the key to capturing our Nitai Valentine. Having Nitai as our Valentine is super simple. All it needs is a drop of faith. And in fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other scholars have spoken about just having this one small ounce of faith. And we can often think, how am I supposed to have all of this faith? And I know I've spoken about it before. I've spoken about it with friends. We exercise our faith every day. We have no faith we have no actual concrete decision making, right? We have no concrete aspects to say, once I cross the street and the light is red, everyone will stop. We have to take it on faith that people are going to follow the rules. When we get on a plane, we have no idea how good the pilot is. We have no idea how they graduated from their piloting courses. We have no idea if they were able to even get straight A's or whatever the case was. We don't even know how planes work. Even if we did know how planes work, we have to take it on faith that the plane is going to work. But we get on, we take it on faith, and we go to our destination. So I feel like it's the same with our spiritual lives. Except for once we start putting a name to it, then we start rebelling. No, I don't want to surrender. Who says I should surrender? Why should I surrender? No way. But we are actually exercising that surrender in faith every single day. It's up to us to really put our focus with it and remember that this is not something contrary to what we're already doing. This goes in line with everyday life. We may not know how our lungs work, but we take it on faith every day that we wake up and we're going to take that deep breath in and everything is going to work according to how it should. Usually, that lack of faith it comes in when things don't work, right? Like that idea that, oh wait, whoa, if we have some sort of heart issue and our heart's not working, then the presence is brought in, by like that conspicuous presence is brought in there. Like, why isn't my heart working? Wait a second. And so, even our ideas of privilege, even our ideas of what we're entitled to, they all work on faith. So here Nityananda is saying, if you just have a little bit of faith, you will have purchased me. And with the purchasing of Nityananda comes all of this love, acceptance, and compassion. Nityananda is the essence of what is known as Guru Tattva, or the essence of the truth of all spiritual teachers. And so what is the truth of all of our teachers? What should that truth be? They're filled with compassion. They're filled with love and acceptance. They're filled with mercy. And they're even more merciful than Krishna. Sri Chaitanya comes to adopt the mood of a devotee. Why? Well, because there's this huge injunction at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I will protect you from all circumstances, do not fear. And then Krishna thinks, okay, well, what does that mean for my devotees? I just told them all to surrender. What does that look like? What's the practical application? And so then Krishna decides, okay, I have to adopt the mood of a devotee in order to show what that looks like, in order to dive really deeply into this process and show that surrender is possible, that all of this is actually possible. And that when it is possible, what's waiting for us on the other side is an ocean, an inundation of spiritual happiness, bliss, love, acceptance, all the things that we're looking for. So this is Sri Chaitanya, this Krishna in the role of a devotee, trying to show us exactly how to practice what is being preached. And then you have Nityananda, this essence of all of our teachers, the truth, the real absolute truth of all of our teachers. And there's one example given. There was a young brahmachari, or kind of like a little monk student, who was traveling with Sri Chaitanya for 2 years. And somewhere along the way, he kind of got caught up with these traveling gypsies, for lack of a better term. And they had this philosophy. And what they would do is this brand of travelers, right? They would have these ladies that were able to really kind of lure people in with their charms and the way they'd speak, and give them this kind of philosophy, which was pseudo spiritual. And they would lure people in, and then they'd become part of their traveling band. Sometimes they'd steal from them and all kinds of things. But this monk student who was traveling with God gets lured in by this traveling band of gypsies. And it is said that Sri Chaitanya has to go and drag him back by the hair back into his association. And so then they continue their travels together. But when they get back to where Sri Chaitanya was staying at the beginning in Puri, Sri Chaitanya tells his associates, he says, I was traveling with this boy, and then he got caught up with this traveling band of people, and I had to go and rescue him. And I rescued him. And Sri Chaitanya never said anything about it until they got back to Puri. And he says, now I never want to see him again. All of the devotees and associates are kind of crestfallen. How could you reject someone? What's happening? And especially that one student was incredibly disheartened. And he's thinking, what can I do? Now how can I find shelter? It now seems as though God himself has said, okay, go away now. Too much trouble. Isn't this the plight of all of us? Aren't we just always afraid of that day that maybe God will say, you've pushed me to my limits, right? Like all of the things that I can accept and all of the things that I can overlook, you've kind of pushed me to the limits. Aren't we all afraid that God will one day reject us and say, okay, that's it. I don't ever want to see you again. What happens if that were to occur? The moral of this story is something that I've kind of taken with me. Nityananda steps forward, and he has kind of a conference with a few other devotees. And then he goes to that monk. And first, they say that Nityananda takes that monk under his wing, kind of instructs him, teaches him, soothes him. And then he says, I want you to go back to Navadvip. And Navadvip is a place in Bengal where Sri Chaitanya was originally from. He says, I want you to stay there, near the place where Sri Chaitanya's mother lives. And I want you to enlighten them all about your journey of 2 years with Sri Chaitanya. Spend your days telling them those stories over and over and over again. You will bring new life to their hearts once they hear about Sri Chaitanya. They haven't been able to see him in years, but they will see him through you. Essentially, he gets to be like the Instagram post for all of the people in Navadvip who missed it. And so this is a blessing. This is a blessing for this one student who's able to now be a guiding light for so many people who are missing Sri Chaitanya so much. But it all comes because of the mercy of Lord Nityananda. So our spiritual teachers can sometimes be even more merciful than God, even more compassionate. And then what does Krishna say? Krishna says, my mercy follows the mercy of my devotees. Those devotees, they have purchased me by their love. And so they have a say on where I give my mercy, where I give my compassion. So this is the wonderful example of this story where Nityananda is able to take this young person who's been seemingly rejected by the Supreme, and he's able to instruct him and give him even more mercy so that he's not cast out and not cast away. He gets to go and hang out with the Mother of God. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal at all. So Nityananda, we have so many manifestations of the Supreme Person. When we start speaking, you say, okay, Krishna, he's the Supreme Person. Then you've got Radharani, also God. And then you've got Balaram, also Supreme Person. Yes. You're like, wait, all of these people are the Supreme Person? Yes. And then you've got Sri Chaitanya, also Supreme Person. You're like, again? I don't know if Supreme Person means what you think it means. But the wonderful thing about the Supreme here is that the Supreme Person is unlimited, and they manifest in unlimited ways. So they're constantly trying to manifest in unlimited ways just to have unlimited relationships with each one of us. So there is a manifestation of the Supreme which calls to each and every single heart. And that's what I love about bhakti. That now if you are drawn to the more feminine divine aspect of the Supreme Person, no problem. We've got the divine personality for you. It's like walking into a store and always finding your favorite flavor of ice cream. So there's no bars on how we can give our heart, because there's always going to be a Supreme Person just for us. So we could speak about Lord Nityananda for hours and hours and hours, and in fact I kind of have. I spoke an hour 2 weeks ago about Lord Nityananda, and then I spoke another hour and 20 minutes 2 days ago about Lord Nityananda. And so now here we go again for another round of speaking about Lord Nityananda. So please, all of those are posted on YouTube, so you can catch up with those ones. I wanted to give a few pastimes and fun things that I hadn't touched on in either of those lectures, which is like, what is left? So much. So first, from Chaitanya Bhagavat, there is a really, really short story that has always been extraordinary for me. So I'll start with that, and then we'll go into another one, which is more of a loving pastime for Valentine's Day. So this is about Nityananda in a place called Panihati. Nityananda, the origin of Sri Anantadev, finally reached the village of Panihati by the shores of the Ganga. So if you are feeling a little bit confused, just go with it. Go with me. Nityananda Prabhu and his associates then arrived at the house of Raghava Pandit at Panihati. Raghava Pandit was overjoyed to see Nityananda Prabhu. Sri Marakata Dwajkara, who was a disciple of Raghava Pandit, also became very pleased. Nityananda Prabhu, along with his associates, happily resided at the village of Panihati for some time. Always overwhelmed with prem, Nityananda would often go into a trance of ecstasy. When he desired to dance, 3 famous singers would hurriedly come. Greatly pious Madhava Ghosh was very expert in performing kirtan. Indeed, there was no better singer in the world. He was known as the singer of Vrindavan and was very dear to Nityananda. As soon as the 3 brothers, Madhava, Govinda, and Vasudev, would begin to sing, the Supreme Lord Nityananda would begin to dance. I always thought that that line was quite appropriate for my life. I have 3 boys in my family. They're named Govinda, Vasudev, and Keshava Madhava. And they do some of the most amazing kirtan that I've ever borne witness to. And it's not just because they're in my family, but also because they happen to be wonderful kirtaniyas. And so whenever I think about this, I think, there's no way you can kind of, and it wasn't kind of planned like that. When they were born, it wasn't planned that, we'll name them after all of these kirtaniyas from the time of Sri Chaitanya. It just happened. And so that kind of just lets me know that there's no coincidence. It's all divine arrangement. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. So if you have any good wishes and blessings and prayers in your heart, please shower them on these 3 brothers that I love so, so much, that they will always get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, and that whenever and wherever they do kirtan, that Chaitanya Nitai, that Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will always arrive at that spot and give them their blessings and dance to the tunes of their beautiful kirtan. So that is Madhava, Govinda, and Vasudev Ghosh. Not the same as my Govinda, Vasudev, and Keshava Madhava. So when supremely powerful Avadut Nityananda danced, the earth would shake with his every step. He continually chanted the holy name of Lord Hari. Seeing his towering figure and ecstatic dancing, the people were struck with wonder. Sometimes he glanced at someone while dancing, and that person would somehow fall to the ground, being filled with love of God and absorbed in transcendental mellows. This marked the auspicious beginning of Lord Nityananda's deliverance of the fallen conditioned souls. He would dance for a long time, manifesting all the signs of ecstatic love of Sri Krishna. So Nityananda he's been sent, deputed, to go to Panihati, to go to Bengal by Lord Chaitanya. And Sri Chaitanya says to Nityananda, I want you to go and deliver everybody that I could not. He says, I'm a renunciate, a sannyasi. I could not speak to certain people, kings, wealthy people, materialists. As a sannyasi, it would go against the codes of conduct for my particular ashram in life if I were to speak to any of these people. And so I couldn't associate closely with them, but you can. Nitai, you go, and infused with all of the essence of all of the love of God, of who I am, you preach to them, you uplift them, you give them all the love of God that they've been desiring and needing. So this is Nitai. Nitai has now gone and he arrives in Panihati, and this is the first big festival as he is arriving to inundate this place with love of God. So after some time, Nityananda Prabhu sat down on a throne and ordered all of his servants to perform elaborate worship. Eventually, he told Raghava, he told him that he wanted a garland of special flowers called Kadamba flowers. And so he said, make me a garland of Kadamba flowers and bring it quickly. I am very fond of Kadamba flowers. In fact, I always reside in a forest of Kadamba trees. Raghava folded his hands and said, my lord, it is not yet the season for Kadamba trees to flower. Nitai said, go to your home and look carefully. There may be a flower or 2 somewhere. Raghava Pandit went straight to his house. To his great surprise, he saw something wonderful. Beautiful Kadamba flowers blossomed on a lemon tree in his courtyard. How wonderful were the colors and fragrance of those flowers! Just seeing them freed one from material bondage. Seeing those beautiful Kadamba flowers, Raghava Pandit began losing consciousness in ecstasy. Controlling himself, he quickly made a garland of Kadamba flowers and then brought it before Lord Nityananda. Nityananda Prabhu was very pleased and put the garland around his neck. The sweet fragrance of kadamba flowers overwhelmed the Vaishnavas, and they all felt blissful and happy. This story for me was always indicative of something incredibly important. We might think that the time is not right for something. We might think that there are obstacles standing in the way of all of our blessings. We might think that, oh, what can I offer? I'll be Krishna conscious when the time is right. I'll be Krishna conscious when it's good for me to bloom, when I retire, when, older, whatever the case is. And I feel like Nityananda is saying, look again, go look again. When our faith is lacking and we're thinking there are all these external things that need to come in and make the flowers of our faith bloom, I feel like Nityananda is saying, look again, go, have faith. And when we look again with that faith, miracles begin to blossom. When we feel ill-equipped to serve, but then we dig deep and we decide to do it anyway. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, wonderful, wonderful Vaishnav saint, has said that is when empowerment happens. And this empowerment is undoubtedly what caused those kadamba flowers to bloom on a lemon tree in the courtyard of Raghava Pandit, where they should not have been, at a time when they should not have been, in a place where they should not have been, on a tree, like a lemon tree, with different colors and a gorgeous fragrance. These are the miracles of our lives, just waiting to bloom. But we need that faith. We need that faith in our dearest friend. We need that little nudge from Nitai saying, look again. Those spiritual teachers who come into our lives and say, oh, you think you're all out of faith? You think you're all out of love in your heart? You think you're all out of mercy? Look again. That mercy knows no bounds, even when you think it shouldn't be there. Even when we think, I don't even deserve this. If we have that faith, then we can watch and see how those miracles will bloom into flowers that maybe should not have even been there, into the biggest blessings that we could not have even dreamt of. So sometimes we have to have faith that surrender yields the most beautiful garland. If we can just give ourselves the wherewithal to just surrender a little bit, just look again. And Sachinandan Swami actually tells that story quite beautifully. And that look again is something that he was saying. He said, no, look again. Look one more time. Maybe there's a flower or two. I love it how Nityananda is so nonchalant. Maybe you'll find a flower or two. And enough to make an entire garland. And Nityananda is very tall, right? 7 feet tall. Imagine needing a garland for someone who's 7 feet tall. You need a lot of flowers, and kadamba flowers are not very big usually. They're kind of small. So you need a lot of them. So just amazing just to see if we just have that wherewithal to look again, look one more time in the courtyard of the heart where we think, I've spent everything. I have nothing left. I don't have any hope left. Look again. With the mercy of Nitai on our side, anything and everything is possible. So that brings us to the a short version of our second pastime. And so the reason that Sri Chaitanya sent Lord Nityananda back to Navadvip, one of them, was to deliver the fallen souls and all of these things that the people he couldn't speak to, and actually really fallen souls. We use that term a lot in spiritual life, fallen souls, but really it refers to these people who are just downtrodden in heart and mind and spirit, in their spirituality, just completely feeling like they have nowhere else left to turn. And isn't that all of us? Isn't that all of us? And we might feel like our predicament is incredibly heart-wrenching for us. And there will always be somebody who has more material suffering. We can always find somebody with more suffering, but that does not negate our suffering. So isn't that all of us? We're all fallen. So he says, go reclaim them. Reclaim, right? Reclaim them, which means we already have a relationship. Nityananda has already had, Chaitanya Nitai have already placed their claim on us. It's just us. We haven't been acknowledging it. So Nitai can reclaim us. So now in that reclaiming process, he tells Nitai, also, you should go and get married. Start a family. Become a family person. And give another example. Because Sri Chaitanya, as divinity, he took on the role of being a renunciate. And so one might think this is the only way to surrender. Nityananda gets to show the other side, how to surrender and still be in contact with people in the world. Because we also have to do that, don't we? We can't quit our day jobs. We can't just go off into a forest. So how do we then engage in spiritual life and reach the pinnacle of perfection while still associating with others? So he tells them, go get married. So I kind of want to read a little bit about the marriage of Lord Nityananda. I was about to say, like, and now it's hidden, but it's not. I found it. Okay. So one day, Lord Nityananda woke up early in the morning and set out for a town called Ambika Nagar. He took a servant with him, Udaranyadat, who was a merchant by profession and his intimate associate. When Lord Nityananda arrived at the door of Suryadas Pandit, he sent Udarandat inside the house. Udaran went inside and informed Suryadas of the Lord's arrival, and so Suryadas rushed out to greet the Lord. Falling at the feet of Nityananda Prabhu, Suryadas offered his obeisances. Then with folded hands he says, "What good fortune!" Lord Nityananda said, "I have come to you with a purpose. Please give me your daughter's hand in marriage." Lord Nityananda is nothing if not direct. The Pandit knew the glories of Nityananda Prabhu, but at that moment he forgot everything, being bewildered by the Lord's illusory energy. "How is it possible?" the Brahmin humbly said. "We first have to weigh many considerations, such as caste, the stars, and family. Although you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, you are an outcast, and I am a Brahmana." So we hear a lot about the caste system in India. And especially me being an American and being within this spiritual practice from birth, I've heard a lot about caste. You know, a lot of people are like, you're not within the caste system and you're not within the certain culture, but you're still taking up this process of bhakti. Good for you. And so there's this idea of being marginalized due to this caste system. And we see what an incredible stronghold it has on society, even up to the point of God. When God comes and says, "Can I marry your daughter?" somehow the first consideration is astrology and caste. So, hearing this reply, Nityananda Prabhu left that place while everyone watched in wonder. Suryadas Pandit felt disappointed and went inside his house. "Will my own dream come true?" he thought. "Oh Lord Krishna, will it ever come to be that by the arrangement of providence that Nityananda Prabhu will become my son-in-law?" So now this is actually what he wanted. But somehow he presents all of these objections. So now he's thinking about his family. What will my family say? And we can see this, you know, there's these loving relationships. You get into a relationship with someone and then they're thinking, oh, but what is my family going to say? And what is my extended family going to say? And what is society going to say? And all of these things that we think should not be considerations, but they become the main considerations to us achieving these relationships which keep us going. So pondering over this, Suryadas goes back to his relatives and he informs them and he asks them, "What can we do?" And everyone is disappointed. They say, "Oh no, how can this be? We don't know his lineage. We don't know his family. We don't know his caste. How can we give our sweet, gentle-natured daughter, Janava? How can we give them to this Nityananda? We hear he's an ascetic, but nobody really knows where he comes from. And he's very, very mysterious. And he acts in all kinds of very mysterious ways. So how can we give our daughter to him?" As Janava listened to her father's talks from within her room, her natural love for the Lord arose within her heart. Indeed, tears of love began to flow from her eyes. She covered her face with a cloth, but the cloth became soaked with her tears. So Suryadas is telling them, I hope, I have a dream that this person would become the husband of my daughter Janava. But now there are so many considerations. The family members say, we see so many things in our dreams. How is it that we can give our Janava to Nityananda? We are but householders after all. So after receiving this objection from the different family members, suddenly everyone heard a cry coming from inside the house. Something had happened to Janava. They rushed inside and picked her up and then brought her out onto the veranda. She was unconscious and her eyes had rolled upward into their sockets. Her entire body had become cold and her face was covered with perspiration. A doctor came and diagnosed that she had epilepsy, saying that there was no cure for this disease. He informed the girl's relatives that seldom does a person with epilepsy live for very long. He then treated her according to the prescriptions of the scriptures. Even after applying proper medication, there was no improvement. The physician said, best to take your daughter to the banks of the Ganges and arrange for her funeral rites to be performed. The doctor has given up immediately, saying, I don't think that there's anything to be done. Suryadas began to cry when he heard these words. Gauridas, an associate, was consoling him and said, I think we have committed an offense at the feet of Avadut Nityananda. We must beg his pardon and bring him back here as soon as possible. As long as we live in this world, we should try to maintain relationships. After death, the relationships no longer exist. If he can revive our daughter, then we should arrange for her marriage with him. This is my advice to all of you. Let us go to Nityananda Prabhu and fall at his feet at once. So essentially saying, okay, we could have a daughter and not give her to Nityananda, but then it seems like she's going to die. So if marrying her to Nityananda keeps her alive, wouldn't it be better to have a living daughter who's married to Nityananda? Like, better that all these considerations should go out the window. Everyone heartily agrees. Lord Nityananda was sitting under a banyan tree on the banks of the Ganges. Tears glided from his eyes as he chanted the holy name of Krishna. Gauridas, along with his relatives, went to Nityananda Prabhu and fell at his feet. The Lord quickly picked him up while patting him on the back. My dear cowherd man, have you all forgotten me? The Lord said. Now some might find this a very interesting thing to say. Were they cowherds? Or was Lord Nityananda remembering all of their previous relationships as the cowherds in Vrindavan and his previous role as Balaram? Nityananda placed his hands on Suryadas's shoulders. Suryadas Pandit fell at the feet of Nityananda Prabhu and lamented, You completely bewildered my intelligence. Although you are capable of doing anything, you did not inspire me to give up my attachment for Varnashram Dharma. Please give us the shelter of your lotus feet and thus save us. This is a line that I've kind of adopted into my own life. When I see myself falling into different traps and different little mistakes, and then I come back and I'm like, oh my Lord, why didn't you inspire me from within with the proper intelligence to see who you are and to see who I am and to see our proper relationship in this matter? Why didn't you inspire me with the intelligence to surrender sooner, faster? So I remember these words just before the time of Lord Nityananda's marriage, where it's like, you are the supreme person, but you bewildered me. Why didn't you inspire me from within? You are the indwelling Paramatma, the super soul within the heart. There's no one who knows better than you. Why didn't you give me the wherewithal? Please help me. So I often find myself praying like this when I get sufficiently frustrated by not surrendering. I'm like, oh Lord, why didn't you give me the proper intelligence? Basically anything to avoid the accountability falling on me. So saying this, Pandit took Lord Nityananda to his home. His daughter Janava was lying at the doorstep, covered with a cloth, as the sunshine fell upon her. This appeared like lightning striking a cloud. Her eyes bulged in their sockets as tears incessantly fell from them. Her curly hair enhanced the beauty of her forehead. The symptoms of impending death appeared on her body. At that moment, the aroma of the Lord's body entered her nostrils. By smelling this aroma, she immediately regained consciousness. Janava hurriedly covered her face with a cloth and said, "Where am I? What is happening?" She then got up and entered her house. At that time, Nityananda Prabhu, the reservoir of transcendental pastimes, displayed a six-armed form in the courtyard of Suryadas Pandit. His two upper hands held a bow and arrow. His two middle hands held a plow and a stick. And his lower two hands carried a sannyas danda and a water pot. His head was adorned with a crown, and his ears were decorated with earrings. His entire body was radiant with valuable jewels and ornaments. Upon seeing this form of the Lord, everyone fell at his feet. So now we've often heard of Sri Chaitanya manifesting a six-armed form called Sadbhuj, which means six-armed. Sadbhuja. Now, Lord Nityananda has manifested a Sadbhuj form. And, there's a wonderful friend of mine named Jayadev who loves Lord Nityananda, and he does amazing art. And I feel like he might have done this and I missed it, but seeing a rendition of this six-armed Nityananda Sadbhuj form would be so wonderful. So that's my request to him. And if he doesn't see this podcast, I will write him about it later. That hopefully he can give us all joy with a rendition of this six-armed form. After this, they very joyfully perform the marriage ceremony between Janava Devi and Lord Nityananda. Janava Devi then goes on, after Lord Nityananda wraps up his own earthly pastime, she goes on to become the foremost of the leading Vaishnavas of the time. She becomes the leader and the teacher of all of the Vaishnavas. She goes on to initiate many, 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 many Vaishnavas. And she goes on to take Narottam Das Thakur under her wing. She takes the son of Lord Nityananda, Veer Chandra, under her wing. And now, why would I say the son of Lord Nityananda, not her own son? Lord Nityananda also marries Janava's sister, Vasudha. And so he has two wives, Janava and Vasudha. And so the child of Lord Nityananda, Veer Chandra, comes from Vasudha Devi. But he takes Janava, his stepmother, essentially, to be his own guru. And so she initiates many people. She holds many, many kirtan programs. She exhibits loads of miracles. But this is the Janava who had almost lost her life because they were about to refuse to allow her to be married to Lord Nityananda on some sort of societal consideration. So when we think about our spiritual lives, and then we start thinking about our spiritual lives in terms of some societal considerations, what are we doing to our souls? Think about the implications that will have on us. We are innately spiritual beings. We can try and fool ourselves into thinking that we are material folks in this body having these material experiences, and we actually are. We are having these experiences as much as we can feel as though experiences within a dream are absolutely real. When we are in a dream, we are 100% there. It takes so much work and so much spiritual acknowledgement, right? It takes spiritual work to be able to acknowledge that you're in a dream and then control that dream. Such is the same for our material lives in these bodies. It takes so much work to acknowledge that, wait a second, there's a soul in here, different from all of this, that is yearning for something outside of this experience. And then to be able to control our material situation based on that spiritual realization. So they almost missed it. They were almost going to stand in the way of that happy relationship, this marriage. What's standing in the way of the marriage of our souls with our divine person? What is standing in the way of our spirituality? So we have to take a deep look at it. And then pray to Lord Nityananda, O compassionate, merciful Nitai, mischievous, playful, but always willing to accept everyone, anyone. Help me. You are the essence of all gurus. You can help me. Inspire me from within with the knowledge and the wherewithal to see where I'm standing in my own way. Help me see through all of the obstacles and the blockages that are standing before me. Help me, infuse me with your mercy and your compassion. And when that happens, miracles come, one after the other. We get the greatest thing that we've ever been looking for. And in the case of Janava Devi, there's so much mercy there, so much compassion. She has so many teachings. And at some point, when we get to her appearance day, we will dedicate a see-through podcast just for her, because it's so wonderful. She was an emblem of humility. She would cook for even all of her disciples. She would serve them. She found ways to relate to them with just grace and elegance and all of the compassion of a loving spiritual mother. She was able to give them teachings upon teachings upon teachings. There were people who tried to kill her several times, and they never succeeded. This is our divine couple. We have Janava Devi and we have Nitai, and they're always there to guide us and protect us on this path. Always there to make sure that we know that no matter what, there's always a home for us to come to. We are seen, and we are absolutely loved by them both. So as if, Radha Krishna, as if we didn't have, as if one divine couple wasn't enough. We have so many divine couples that we could pray to for strength and pray to for an uplifting day. So on this Valentine's Day, I would like to give a shout out and a prayer of gratitude and absolute thanks to Sri Janava Devi and Nityananda Prabhu for their tireless work, 500 years plus. Their romance is 500 plus years strong. And this is what gives me hope and inspiration in my spiritual life. Being able to reflect on all of these different stories and pastimes, which are not just stories, these are histories. And I get to reflect on all of the ways in which we can just be made better. The ways in which we can feel better. Because we're often in those situations where we just don't feel right. You don't feel at ease. We don't always feel at ease in our material situations. But there's always a home. And in that home, there's always an abundance of spiritual personalities rooting for us, pulling for us, defending us, advocating for us. So thank you for being with me as we get to know these two personalities, Janava Devi and Nityananda Prabhu. I hope that this kind of sparks an interest for you in getting to know them more. Definitely start Googling. Definitely go look up all of the YouTube videos that you can find on all of them. And we will hopefully be together once again and more to talk about both of them, all of our spiritual people, which there are an unlimited number. We could be here for forever. But I guess that's what this is all about. Helping each other, coming together, and gaining some inspiration where maybe we thought there was none. There's always the opportunity to look again. Just look again. So thank you so much. I hope that this brings some love and some great Valentine's Day energy into your day. If you have someone to spend it with, please spend it amazingly. If you do not have someone to spend it with, that's a lie, because we always have somebody to spend it with. And that said, I now have to actually go and spend this Valentine's Day with some of these supreme divine people. So I'm wishing you all a day filled with love and happiness and bliss and joy and all of the things that Nityananda is known for. It is his day. So in honor of him, when you see somebody, give a little love. Thank you so much. Loving all of you. I will see you next Sunday for another see-through episode where we'll go back to the introduction to Krishna book. We'll dive back in with a new understanding of who some of our key players are. And we'll see how far we get. And we'll see what other realizations come up for all of us. Until then, Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai. Shri Nityananda Ram ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you and see you all soon. Hare Krishna.